The challenge on Vorthal IV. Crimson sky of Vorthal 4 blazed with volcanic ash as tensions reached a breaking point in the makeshift diplomatic camp. For 3 days, the Jevak Dominion had pressed their demands with increasing aggression, their towering forms casting long shadows over the human delegation. "Your species lacks honor," growled General Kethfer Morvok, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming purple-black in the alien light. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, the Jevak commander's forearms gestured dismissively at the human representatives. "You cling to this worthless rock like parasites, refusing to acknowledge our superior claim to the Tritanium deposits." Captain Ezra Blackstone, Earth Colonial Defense, remained seated at the negotiation table, his weathered hands folded calmly before him. At first glance, he appeared unremarkable average height, graying temples, simple military fatigues. But his steel gray eyes held depths that spoke of years spent on frontier worlds where survival depended on more than brute strength. "The mining rights were legally established by the Terran Colonial Charter," Blackstone replied evenly. "We've followed every interstellar protocol." Kethfer's mandibles clicked in what the humans had learned was contemptuous laughter. "Protocols? Laws?" His secondary arm swept toward the jagged volcanic landscape beyond the camp. "This is the frontier human. Here, strength determines ownership. Your legal documents are meaningless." The other Jevak warriors shifted restlessly, their biomechanical armor humming with barely contained energy. Their leader, War Champion Zixandra Velthik, stepped forward. Even among her own kind, she was massive 12 feet of enhanced muscle and integrated weaponry, her armor bearing the scars of 100 victories. "I invoke the right of champions," she declared, her voice carrying the authority of ancient tradition. "Single combat. Your best against our best. Winner claims the mining rights and the planet." The human delegation exchanged glances. "Colonel," Martinez whispered urgently to Blackstone, "Sir, we should decline. Send a request for military support instead." But Blackstone was already standing, his calm demeanor unchanged. "I accept." The Jevak burst into harsh laughter. Even Zixandra's 4 eyes widened in surprise before narrowing with predatory amusement. "You? A small, aging human thinks to face me?" "The challenger has the right to choose their champion," Blackstone said simply. "I choose myself." Kethfer's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is not a jest, human. Zixandra has never lost. She has crushed the champions of 17 species. Your death will be swift but certain." Blackstone nodded slowly, as if considering. "This information for the first time. I understand the risks. But I've spent the last 72 hours studying your traditions, General. The duel must take place on neutral ground, somewhere neither side has prepared defenses." He gestured toward the volcanic valley stretching between their camps. "I suggest the old crater basin. Archaeological scans show it's been uninhabited for millennia." "Acceptable," Zixandra rumbled, clearly amused by what she perceived as the human's naivety. "At dawn, little human, bring whatever weapon you choose. It will not matter." As the Jevak delegation departed, Colonel Martinez grabbed Blackstone's arm. "Ezra, what are you thinking?" "She'd tear you apart." Blackstone's eyes remained fixed on the volcanic valley, where ancient ruins jutted from the hardened lava flows like broken teeth. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But sometimes, Colonel, the best weapon isn't the one you carry into battle. Preparation." And doubt the pre-dawn hours on Vorthal 4 brought an eerie stillness to the volcanic landscape. In the human camp, tension hung thick as morning mist as Captain Blackstone made his final preparations. His choice of weapon had stunned everyone. A standard-issue M47 kinetic pistol, barely larger than his palm, designed for close-quarters emergency use. "Captain, please reconsider," urged Lieutenant Commander Nova Reeves, the expedition's tactical officer. Her dark skin gleamed with perspiration, despite the cool morning air. At least take the plasma rifle. The pulse cannon. Anything with more stopping power. Blackstone carefully checked the pistol's single magazine 12 rounds of standard ammunition. Nothing special, nothing enhanced. This will do. Will do for what suicide? Dr. Jameson Torres, the team's xenobiologist, paced frantically. I've studied the HFY anatomy. Their exoskeleton can deflect small arms fire. Their combat armor is military grade. That pop gun couldn't scratch her. A captain slipped the weapon into his belt holster with practiced ease. Sometimes the smallest key opens the largest door, Doctor. Across the valley, the HFY camp buzzed with anticipation. Zixandra performed her ritual preparations, oil glistening on her biomechanical enhancements. Her weapon of choice dominated. The pre-fight display, a 10-foot plasma battle axe that could cleave through starship hull plating. Its energy core pulsed with deadly crimson light. The human mocks us, snarled Sub-Commander Nextho, Zixandra's lieutenant. This cannot be their true champion. Perhaps it is some form of psychological warfare. Zixandra's forearms moved, in fluid coordination, testing her armor's response systems. Psychology will not save him when my axe separates his head from his shoulders. I have faced the berserkers of Tau Ceti, the war machines of the Silicon hegemony. One small human with a toy weapon? She made a sound like grinding stone HFY laughter. This will be over in moments. Back at the human camp, the support team ran final diagnostics on their emergency equipment. They would be allowed to observe, but not interfere ancient tradition. Demanded the duel remain strictly one-on-one. Blackstone sat quietly on a supply crate, seemingly oblivious to the frantic activity around him. Instead, he studied a small data tablet displaying geological surveys of the valley floor. To the casual observer, he appeared to be reading historical documents about the planet's volcanic activity. But Nova Reeves, watching closely, noticed, his fingers occasionally tapping specific coordinates. "Captain," she ventured carefully, "what exactly did you do during those archaeological surveys yesterday?" He looked up, meeting her gaze with those unsettling gray eyes. "I prepared the battlefield, Commander." In warfare, victory often goes not to the strongest or fastest, but to whoever best understands the terrain. Colonel Martinez approached, his face grim. Satellite imagery shows the entire HFY fleet in orbit. "Ezra, if you lose this duel, they'll claim the planet by right of combat. Earth Command will have no legal recourse." "Then I suppose," Blackstone said calmly, standing and checking his chronometer, "I'd better not lose." The first rays of Vorthal's binary suns pierced the volcanic haze, casting long shadows across the ancient crater floor. In the distance, the massive forms of long-dead war machines jutted from hardened lava, flows relics of some forgotten conflict that had scarred this world eons ago. As both parties moved toward designated dueling, ground whispers followed in their wake. The duel begins. The ancient crater basin stretched before them like a wound in the planet's flesh, its floor a mosaic of cooled lava flows and jutting metallic ruins. The chosen battleground was a circular clearing roughly 200 meters across, surrounded by jagged volcanic formations that would serve as natural amphitheater seating for the tour. Witnesses. Both delegations arranged themselves on opposite sides of the crater rim. The HFY warriors created an impressive display, dozens of armored figures with integrated weaponry, their biomechanical forms gleaming in the morning light. By contrast, the human observation team looked almost fragile, clustered around their portable equipment stations. General Kethvar stood at the center of the rim, his four arms raised to address both sides. By the ancient codes of the HFY Dominion, and witnessed by both species, this duel shall determine ownership of Vorthal IV and all its resources. Combat continues until one champion yields or dies. Are both champions ready? Down in the crater basin, Zixandra raised her massive plasma axe, its energy core blazing like a captive star. She stood nearly twice Blackstone's height, her enhanced armor making her appear even more imposing against the desolate landscape. I am ready to claim victory for the Dominion. The Jevok warriors roared their approval, the sound echoing off. The crater walls, like thunder. Captain Blackstone simply nodded, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. Ready. The contrast was almost comical. Where Zixandra dominated the battlefield through sheer presence, Blackstone seemed to fade into the landscape, just another piece of military equipment in a field full of ancient war debris. Begin! Kethfer bellowed. Zixandra immediately charged, her powerful legs carrying her forward with surprising speed despite her massive frame. The plasma axe left trails of superheated air as she swung it in wide arcs, each stroke capable of vaporizing a human body. Blackstone drew his pistol with fluid motion and fired not at the approaching war champion, but straight down at the ground near his feet. The single shot echoed across the crater, followed by a moment of stunned silence. What is the human doing? Demanded Nexthel from the observation area. Has he lost his mind? Zixandra slowed her charge, mandibles clicking. In confusion and amusement. Do you surrender already, little human? Or do you think shooting the ground will save you? Look at him, laughed one of the Shivak warriors. Their champion cannot even aim properly. Even some of the human observers shifted uncomfortably. Lieutenant Commander Reeves gripped her binoculars tighter, trying to understand Blackstone's strategy. What are you doing, Captain? She whispered. Blackstone holstered his weapon and took several steps backward, his eyes never leaving Zixandra. I'm not surrendering, he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the crater. I'm just giving you a moment to enjoy your last few seconds of confidence. The war champion's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. You dare mock me? Your pathetic weapon cannot even penetrate my armor. You're right, Blackstone agreed calmly. This gun couldn't scratch you. But that's not what it was for. Beneath Zixandra's feet, the volcanic soil began to tremble faintly at first, like a distant earthquake. She paused, her combat instincts finally detecting something amiss. The trembling intensified. What? She began, but her words were cut off as the ground directly beneath her suddenly cracked. A sound like grinding metal echoed from deep underground, growing louder by the second. Ancient machinery, dormant for millennia, suddenly stirred to life in the planet's depths. Zixandra looked down in shock, his hairline fractures spread outward from the impact point of Blackstone's bullet, and for the first time in her career, as a war champion, uncertainty flickered across her alien features. What lies beneath the ground beneath Zixandra's feet split open with a sound like the planet itself screaming. Chunks of volcanic rock and hardened lava exploded outward as something massive began rising from the depths, something that had been waiting in mechanical slumber for thousands of years. Impossible. General Kethvar roared from the crater rim, his forearms gesturing frantically at his technical staff. Our surveys showed no active technology in this sector, but their sensors had been wrong. Emerging from the shattered earth came the angular hull of an automated defense platform, its ancient armor plating scarred by eons of burial, but still functional. Weapon pods along its surface rotated with servo-mechanical precision, targeting systems coming online with electronic chirps and whirs. Zixandra leaped backward with desperate agility, her plasma axe forgotten as she stared at the mechanical Leviathan rising before her. The defense platform was easily the size of a main battle tank, its multiple weapon clusters now tracking her movement with predatory focus. How? She gasped, her warrior's composure finally cracking. The archaeological surveys showed this area was dormant. Captain Blackstone stood calmly 20 meters away, well outside the platform's activation radius. You're absolutely right about the surveys. This crater has been quiet for 3,000 years. But you see, War Champion, I didn't just study your combat traditions over the past few days. He gestured toward the ancient ruins scattered throughout the valley, metallic structures that both species had dismissed as archaeological curiosities. I also studied the real history of this planet. Turns out Vorthal 4 wasn't always uninhabited. More grinding sounds erupted across the crater basin as additional defense platforms began awakening. The single shot from Blackstone's pistol hadn't just struck the ground. It had activated a precisely positioned transponder beacon, one he'd carefully planted during his archaeological survey the previous day. The Vorthal Collective fell 3 millennia ago, Blackstone continued, his voice carrying easily across the now chaotic battlefield. But like any advanced civilization facing extinction, they built contingencies. Automated planetary defense. Networks, hidden underground, programmed to activate if this world ever faced invasion again. Lieutenant Commander Reeves nearly dropped her binoculars in amazement. He spent yesterday mapping the network. That's why he kept requesting geological survey data. Dr. Torres was frantically scanning his tablet. The archaeological records. Captain Blackstone accessed every database we had on pre-spaceflight civilizations. He wasn't looking for mining data. He was looking for weapon systems. Down in the crater, Zixandra found herself surrounded by 6 fully operational defense platforms, their weapon clusters locked onto her biosignature. Ancient technology, but still devastatingly effective. Energy readings showed plasma cannons, kinetic mass drivers, and several weapon types human science couldn't immediately identify. This is cheating, she snarled, raising her axe defensively. The duel was to be single combat. Single combat, Blackstone agreed. One champion against another. You chose to face me. I chose to face you here. He gestured at the awakening machinery around them. I didn't bring weapons to this fight, War Champion. I brought the battlefield itself. The largest defense platform completed its emergence, towering above even Zixandra's enhanced form. Its primary cannon, a massive plasma bore designed to engage orbital targets, swiveled downward with mechanical precision. Across the valley, more platforms were rising. Dozens of them, their activation triggered by the network's central command protocol. What had appeared to be a dead world was revealing itself as a carefully prepared fortress, its defenses merely sleeping until needed. General Kethfor's mandibles clicked in rapid-fire anxiety as his technical teams reported impossible readings. Sir, we're detecting weapon signatures across the entire continent. Energy readings are off the scale. These systems are pre-targeting our orbital fleet. The War Champion of the Shivak Dominion, veteran of 17 species' greatest warriors, found herself in a position she'd never experienced. Completely, utterly outgunned. And Captain Ezra Blackstone, the small human with the tiny pistol, simply stood waiting to see what she would choose to do about it. The planet's verdict, as silence stretched across the crater basin like a held breath. Zixandra stood motionless in the center of 6 targeting arrays, each defense platform's weapons trained on her with mechanical patience. The ancient systems hummed with barely contained energy, their power cores glowing brighter as they prepared to deliver devastation that could glass entire city blocks. Yield, Captain Blackstone called out, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The duel ends when one champion surrenders. No one has to die here today. The War Champion's 4 eyes burned with rage and humiliation. Never in her career had she faced such a reversal. Never had victory been torn from her grasp by such an unexpected gambit. Her plasma axe trembled in her grip, its energy core still blazing with deadly potential. You think you've won with trickery? She snarled. This is not honorable combat. Honor? Blackstone's gray eyes hardened. Your people came to our world, made demands backed by threats of annihilation, and insisted we prove our worth through violence. You want to talk about honor while your fleet waits in orbit to claim a planet by force? From the crater rim, General Kethvor's voice boomed across the battlefield. War champion, withdraw! Our orbital scanners show the entire planetary surface is activating. We're detecting weapon signatures that could engage our ships. But Zixandra was beyond reason, her warrior's pride warring with tactical reality. She raised her plasma axe, energy crackling along its edge. I do not surrender. To humans, I am Zixandra Velfic, champion of the nearest defense platform's warning klaxon cut her off a deep, resonant tone that spoke of imminent annihilation. The massive primary cannon adjusted its angle by mere millimeters, its target lock. Now, absolute. Last chance, Blackstone said quietly. The machines don't understand pride or honor. They only understand threat assessment. Right now, you're the one holding the weapon. For a heartbeat that felt like eternity, the war champion stared at the human who had orchestrated her defeat. Then, with visible effort, she powered down her plasma axe and drove its handle into the ground like a staff of surrender. Double quotes, I. Yield. The words came out like grinding stone, each syllable a personal defeat that cut deeper than any wound. But they were enough. The defense platform's targeting systems immediately shifted to standby mode, their weapons no longer tracking her movement. Across the crater, the human delegation erupted in stunned cheers. Even the disciplined military observers couldn't contain their amazement at what they'd witnessed. Lieutenant Commander Reeves was the first to reach Blackstone as he climbed out of the crater basin. Captain, how did you know the defense network would still be functional after 3,000 years? He wiped volcanic dust from his uniform, looking remarkably calm for someone who just redefined planetary diplomacy. I didn't. But the Vorthal Collective built their civilization to last. Their ruins showed evidence of self-repairing systems, redundant power sources, hardened electronics. It was a calculated risk. A calculated risk? Dr. Torres shook his head in disbelief. You bet. Our entire colony on archaeological speculation. No, Blackstone corrected, his gaze moving to the Jevak delegation, now engaged in urgent discussions with their orbital fleet. I bet on human ingenuity. We don't win fights by being the strongest or the most heavily armed. We win by being smarter, more adaptable, and willing to turn any situation to our advantage. General Kethver approached under a flag of parley, his posture betraying deep unease. Captain Blackstone, the duel is concluded. By our laws, you have won the right to this world. And by our laws, General, you're now trespassing in human space without permission. Blackstone's voice carried a subtle edge. I suggest you withdraw. Your fleet, while the planetary defenses are still in standby mode. The Jevak commander's mandibles clicked in what humans had learned was reluctant respect. You have taught us something today, human. Perhaps your species is more dangerous than we assumed. As the alien ships began their departure, vectoring away from a world that had suddenly become far more hazardous than they'd anticipated, Blackstone stood watching the ancient defense platforms slowly retracting into their hidden positions. The planet's guardians were returning to their patient sleep, waiting for the next time their services might be needed. Colonel Martinez joined him at the crater's edge. So what's our next move, Captain? Earth Command is going to want a full report on this unconventional victory. Blackstone smiled for the first time since the crisis began. We tell them the truth, Colonel. Sometimes the best weapon isn't what you bring to the fight, it's what you find when you get there. In the distance, Vorthal, IV's binary suns set. Behind the volcanic peaks, painting the sky in shades of victory. And buried deep beneath their feet, ancient machines settled back into electronic dreams, their vigil renewed for another age.